Welcome to Handmade Happenings. I'm Marissa, and today we're talking about pie crust. Now, pie crust can be a little intimidating, but I don't think it has to be. So I'm sharing the recipe and techniques that work for me. My recipe will be in the description along with a link to the recipe that I based it off of. Start with 1 1/4 cups of flour in a bowl. That's 162.5 grams if you're weighing it. I used a mix of all-purpose flour and home milled flour, but you can just use all-purpose or you could use all home milled flour. Add to that a pinch of salt and mix it together. Next is a 1/2 cup of butter, which is 1 stick. I use only butter. My original recipe actually called for half butter, half shortening. I no longer do that because it cuts down on dishes. If you use a stick of butter, you don't have to cut the butter, you don't have to measure out shortening, and you don't have to try and clean that measuring cup when you're done. You're going to use a pastry cutter to cut the butter into the flour, and this just means you're working it in. You could also use a fork or 2 knives to do this, and when you're done, you want the butter to be in small pieces. Once the butter is in small pieces, you're going to add your water. Most recipes will call for you to have cold water, but I don't bother with that anymore personally because I'm going to chill the dough for several hours. Another thing most recipes will call for is to add the water a teaspoon or a tablespoon at a time. And this is something else that I don't do because I would find that I never added enough water that way. So I start with 3 tablespoons. In the video, I started with 3 tablespoons. Oftentimes, I'll start with 4 tablespoons, which is a 1/4 cup of water. Pour it in and mix. And what you're looking for is the dough to come together and like you pinch it and it holds together. What I find is that when you add it in and mix it, you'll have a lot that clumps together and a lot that does not. So I'll push the dough that has formed together over to one side of the bowl and all of the flour that is not yet hydrated to the other side and add water slowly, at this time probably a tablespoon at a time, and mix it until you have it all hydrated. I'm going to interrupt the video here just to note a mistake that I made when making this particular pie crust, which is that I did not hydrate it enough. I didn't add enough water. And so after making this crust, did Google it and found an article that explains it really well. If I can find the article again, I will link it below. But basically, what it said was that oftentimes you read recipes like pie crust recipes where it says, add water as needed or until it's fully hydrated. And you don't really maybe understand exactly what that means, and then you're worried that you're going to overhydrate it, and because of that, you don't add enough water. So you want your dough to be completely hydrated. You don't want any dry spots, and as I showed earlier in the video, you want it all to be sticking together. Next, I like to just kind of come in and knead it a little. You don't want to overwork your dough, so just press it together so that it all forms a ball. Place it in a bowl with a lid or cover it with plastic wrap and place it in the refrigerator. I chill my dough a long time. Usually I know that I'm going to need it, so if I need a pie crust in the morning for like a quiche, I make it the night before. And if I need it in the afternoon for chicken pot pie or just a pie, then I'll make it in the morning and it will chill all day. After your dough has chilled for several hours, you're ready to roll it out and use it in whatever recipe calls for a pie crust. When you roll out your crust, you'll want to do it on a floured surface. You'll also want to keep an eye on the temperature of the crust because as it gets warm, the butter will melt and start to really stick to the counter. So the faster you work, the better off you'll be. It will also bake better. So if your crust has gotten too warm as you're working, you may want to place it in your pie pan or cookie sheet or whatever you're using and put it back in the refrigerator just to chill it again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any pie crust making tips you would like to share, please leave them in the comments below.